Okay, let's talk about the boomstick. What's going on, everyone? Rafa the Pickleball Tech Dude here, and these are the 5 main takeaways that I had from my most recent trip to Selkirk HQ in Idaho. And you're going to want to stick around for number 5 because it's going to be my first public thoughts regarding the actual playability of the brand new Project Boomstick. Number 1, Selkirk's capabilities are massive and scalable. What do I mean by massive? Well, essentially, if you have 4 or 5 different HQs where you have A, thousands of dedicated space purely for warehouse and shipping, B, dedicated space just for building paddles start to finish in America. Shout out to Michael for showing us how to build a Gen 4 paddle quite literally in front of our eyes. C, thousands of more dedicated space just for testing, both for USAP and UPAA standards, as well as their own unique in-house durability testing. And D, its own standalone brick and mortar store. I think that is a massive operation. And when I say scalable, I literally mean more HQs on the way overseas. To our knowledge, currently in Malaysia and Estonia in Europe. Number 2, Selkirk's next moves are very calculated. A lot of people would describe Selkirk as being behind the ball in terms of paddle innovation and technology, and you would 100% be correct. But essentially, they kind of took a carbon approach. They took a very long time, worked on things in the background, and are planning a series of very calculated moves that will put them back into the spotlight. There's 2 sides to this coin, really. Some people would obviously prefer that a company take lots of time, go through a full R&D process, work out any kinks before bringing something to market, rather than trying to be the first to a technology that's flawed. I personally am on the other side of that coin, where I would have preferred Selkirk taking an approach that was more upfront about what they were really working on. For example, how Spartus is doing with Project Evora, or even making small releases and then making improvements in the future, like 11624 did with their Power Series and then the subsequent release of the Alpha Pro Power Series. However, I of course am not a businessman, and it seems from the look and size of Selkirk's operations, these next moves are going to put them back into the spotlight, and they clearly weren't suffering for the 9 to 12 months that they were out of it. Number 3, Selkirk is being a lot more careful with the talent that they are hiring. I don't know about y'all, but when I used to think about Selkirk, I would think about a brand that seemed like it would sponsor anything that moved. But according to Rob and Mike Barnes, the past several months, which have brought about no real new signings and several players even leaving the brand, have been intentional, as they plan on focusing more on the upcoming talent that's currently under the radar, as well as players that teach pickleball in their communities, which makes a ton of sense when you think about contracted players like Kyle Kazuda, that pickleball guy, or Audrey Bonata, Pickleball Mama, who have very large online followings due to their instructional content. And you realize that the talent at Selkirk really goes beyond the players. Something that I realized really quickly is that Rob and Mike Barnes, the 2 founders of Selkirk I interacted with most frequently, are very sharp guys, gears always turning, and they won't back down from controversial topics because they always know and are confident in their answer. And I bet you can imagine some of the controversial things that I asked them in the upcoming podcasts that I will be releasing once the embargo on the Boomstick is lifted. Number 4, Selkirk is working on more than just paddles. This kind of ties back into point 2, where I said that Selkirk's next moves were going to be calculated and we're going to put them back into the spotlight. And while there's little that I can share publicly outside of the paddle development, what I can say is that if you really thought that Selkirk really needed to step their game up, whether it was with their bags or with their shoes, which I personally thought kind of sucked, They are literally working on everything with subject level experts and are coming out with some things that I think are going to be really cool, genuinely. A little birdie has it that the successor to the Pro S1 Pickleball is on its way, which would be very welcome. All right, and now for the main event, what you've all been waiting for, the Project Boomstick paddle. What I can tell you about it is that it is going to be the most powerful and ideally the most durable paddle that Selkirk has ever made. There's so much I want to talk about with this paddle in terms of the stats on paper, what's inside of the paddle, which Selkirk is being fairly tight-lipped about, and even what those weird red things are on the side. And I can assure you that they serve a greater purpose, and I will be able to talk about those very soon. Here's essentially the gist. If you're looking for big spin, big sweet spot, big power, and big pop, and when I say big, I mean more than a Yola Pro 4, more than a Rhombus Ripple V2, more than a Gearbox GX2, then if you are willing to spend the big bucks, this is a paddle that might interest you. Durability isn't something I'm going to feel comfortable talking about until a little bit later down the line for the full review. And one thing I do want to make very clear, very similar to what I said in the Body Helix Flick F1 review, is that if you find difficulty in controlling power paddles, I would stay very far away from the Boomstick. I probably would only recommend it to 4.0 plus level players, as those under that skill level, this is probably going to hurt your game and it's going to cause you to pop the ball up uncontrollably. I'll have a few more thoughts on This Week in Pickleball coming out Saturday, and I'll also finally get Aaron's thoughts, but that's essentially everything you need to know for now. And if you made it here to the end of the video, I actually have a surprise for you, a sixth fact that I learned at Selkirk HQ. For those of you that don't know, Selkirk hosted a Boomstick only tournament for all the reviewers and content creators that they invited out, and I had the fortune of being paired with Brian Lim from Building Pickleball. I have already been lucky enough to call Brian a friend, and for any of you that are really in the weeds, you would know that me and Brian were actually supposed to play the bread and butter nerdy tourney together, but we ended up getting separated onto different teams. So coming onto this team, it felt like a time for redemption, and me and Brian ended up taking second place. So the secret sixth fact is that I was finally able to make a list of all the reviewers and Selkirk content creators that me and Brian are clearly better than after getting second place. Lewis from Pickleball Pursuit, Justin from Pickleball Etc., Matt from Dinking and Driving, Cody from Dinkin' Donuts, Matt from Matt's Pickleball, APP silver medalist and #1 online school owner Kyle Kazuda, as well as signed pros Shay Underwood and Ty Budson, who were all clearly trying as hard as they could. I've never seen them take something so seriously. And finally, Selkirk co-owners Rob and Mike Barnes. Me and Brian, according to official documented play, are better than everybody. Unless your name is Steven Mijangos from Pickleheads or Austin from the Dink. That one hurt. That's it for this recap. Remember to like, subscribe, comment down below any thoughts you have, or if you're excited to learn more about the Boomstick in the coming weeks. And I hope you all stay happy and healthy, and of course, out on the courts. Until the next one. Peace.